Good morning, bienvenidos, Phoenix. Welcome to Vanguardia, Arizona. I'm your host, James Garcia. It's Saturday, June the 14th, 2025. And what a day this has already been and will be as we start to get rolling. I was listening to reports on the way into the station about two state legislators who have been shot. One of them and his spouse were killed this morning in Minnesota. There was a press conference held by Governor Walz and another legislator who was shot, and his wife, I think, also wounded. Both of them are hospitalized, and Governor Walz of Minnesota is calling it a politically motivated assassination of the two individuals. So quite something to wake up to, given the whole conversation that is being had right now about political violence in this country and how it's out of control. And this may be the single most stark example of that that we've had in recent history. So it's really quite a stunning development this morning. More news about that will be coming out, and I'll try to pass along what I can as the show goes on. I want to thank you for joining us. Vanguardia, Arizona comes to you every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. from the studios at La Onda 1190, 99.5 here in the seemingly always sunny Central Phoenix. Joined today with our producer, Enrique Delgadillo, who's manning the boards today, and we'll be taking our callers, rather our interview subjects when they call in. We have quite a show packed set up for you tonight, so I want to thank you for joining us. If you want to hear podcast episodes of Vanguardia Arizona, our sister publication, Vanguardia America, you can go to Spotify or wherever you find your podcast. In a moment, we'll go to our weekly news roundup. But here's what we have in store for today's newsmaker interviews. After the news, my opening guest will be Emma Wells, Arizona chapter president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. She's here to catch us up on all things legal regarding wave of immigration sweeps across the country that have been occurring under the Trump administration's mass deportation plan. As you have probably been following, there's been a lot going on in Los Angeles and elsewhere around the country and cities across the country. A number of protests have popped up. Today, it happens to also be No King's Day, the inaugural No King's Day, in which there will be mass rallies in some 2,000 cities across the country, including here in Arizona and here in Phoenix. I will talk to Emma about what's happening in Los Angeles and what's happened there over the past week, as federal agents have been conducting raids in that area. And also the follow-up to that, of course, which is the decision by President Trump to send National Guard troops and now the Marines to that city, presumably to help federal officials in their immigration roundup efforts. So it's been a whirlwind. There is a lawsuit that's underway to get the troops booted out of the states, since no president has ordered our soldiers into an American city without the express permission of a state governor since the early 1960s, when then President Johnson ordered troops to Selma to protect civil rights marchers. In this particular case, in California, efforts are now being made to quell protesters, people who basically are marching for civil and human rights. And the Trump administration has decided that he needs to use our military force to do that. This is in conflict with Posse Comitatus, basically a law that says you cannot use troops on the streets to do police work. And so it's regarded as really quite bluntly unconstitutional. It's gone into the courts and is being debated there now. But in California, every neutral observer really who is paying close attention to this has said that the protests there have been overwhelmingly peaceful. There have been clearly some bad apples who have done some damage, but most of the people there are there to protest because they don't believe that sweeping up mothers, fathers, children in the name of this monthly quota of immigration arrests that Trump has set is humane or a good idea, or in many cases legal, because it certainly does circumvent the ability for due process by so many of these people who are being swept up. Anyway, Emma will help us through the legal ramifications of what all of that means in our second segment of the show. After that, I'm really excited to have two special guests, former U.S. HUD Secretary under Barack Obama, and the former mayor of San Antonio, um, Julian Castro, who today serves as the CEO of Latino Community Foundation in California. He'll be joining us. Mr. Castro is the son of Rosie Castro, a well-known civil rights and Chicana activist in Texas. He was elected to the San Antonio City Council in 2001, excuse me, at 26, and then he became mayor in 2009, one of the youngest mayors of a top American city at the time. In 2014, President Barack Obama appointed him to be HUD secretary, where he served until the end of that administration. He also ran for president, of course, in 2020. He's the brother of Joaquin Castro, a congressman from Texas. And today, Julian, who is a political commentator on MSNBC, will be joining us. I'm so glad to have him. Joining Julian Castro in that second segment, or rather in the third segment of our show, will be Vanessa Fuentes, Mayor Pro Tem of Austin. I've asked her to come on the show, not because Austin is such a lovely city and I used to live there, but because there's news happening there in the state with regards to immigration as well. The Mayor Pro Tem is here to talk about what's happening in Texas in the wake of Governor Greg Abbott's decision to call out Texas National Guard troops there purportedly to keep the peace with regards to protesters who are being critical of the Trump administration. Abbott told the Associated Press Thursday that he has ordered the deployment of more than 5,000 Texas National Guard troops, 2,000 state police to help law enforcement manage protest against President Donald Trump in the ongoing federal immigration raids. Some of the troops have been were seen on Wednesday night in downtown San Antonio near the Alamo, and that's that's stirring things up as well, because while National Guard troops have been used as support staff for immigration authorities along the U.S.-Mexico border to provide support services, again, they are not in the business of detaining people. That's not their job. Oh, excuse me. I apologize. I have a bit of a scratch in my throat this morning. Let me take a lozenge and see if that will help it. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. But then in the last segment of today's show, my guest will be Arizona immigration attorney and longtime civil rights activist, also Emilia Banielos. She's a colleague here at La Onda, has a program that appears right after mine, and also I think will be airing during the week, during the day. And she will be joined by an old friend of mine, executive director of Promise Arizona, immigrants' rights group here in Phoenix, and we'll be talking about what's going on in Arizona with regards to all of these developments in immigration. And then finally today, we'll close the show with a cameo of sorts from Laura Madrid, who is the owner of La Onda and a Mexican immigrant herself. And she has asked to come on over the last few minutes of the show to kind of share her thoughts about the troubled times that we are living through, and how people in the community should be and really how to also protect themselves. So that's our show coming up. And now the news. Nationwide protests are planned today in 2,000 cities as part of an event being billed as No King's Day, a massive collective statement against the policy agenda of President Donald J. Trump. Rallies and marches are planned across the state of Arizona, and millions are expected to participate nationwide. The event is meant to coincide with a military parade in Washington that's celebrating the Army's 250th anniversary and President Trump's 79th birthday. On Friday, here in Arizona, Attorney General Chris Mays and Governor Katie Hobbs called on all protesters to remain peaceful in expressing their First Amendment rights to gather and speak out. Jorge Mendoza Yescas, Mexico's Consul General in Phoenix, urged Mexican citizens, Mexican nationals in Arizona, not to attend the protest, given the efforts by federal authorities to deport undocumented immigrants. And incidentally, of course, they have detained people with documentation and even U.S. citizens. So it's a bit of a melee out there and Mr. Mendoza Yescas is asking people to proceed with extreme caution with regards to participating in any rallies today. In Los Angeles, meanwhile, U.S. troops are providing support for the federal immigration authorities. On Friday, one man, a veteran, was briefly detained by U.S. Marines. Los Angeles officials say they are bracing for a massive turnout of protesters in their city. Again, that's all part of this nationwide series of rallies in some 2,000 communities across the country called No King's Day that is expected to happen today. Starting later this morning, all across the country. At a news conference in Los Angeles, the city's police chief, Jim McDonnell, said his agency was ready for whatever happens. In federal court, meanwhile, Governor Newsom and the Democratic attorney generals from across the country are trying to basically boot the troops out from California. A lower court found that the disbursement of the troops was unlawful and unconstitutional. But an appeals court is expected to hold a hearing on Tuesday to take up the matter and discuss the future of it. On a related note, and we're getting ready to close our news roundup, connected to all of this, over the last few days, we've been also listening to a lot of reports about the controversy involving Senator Alex Padilla. Senator Padilla, who was actually scheduled to have a meeting about the troops being sent to California, attended a press conference in California by Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, and was briefly detained. Was actually shoved to the ground, handcuffed, because he started to ask a question. It's created quite an amazing stir and a response from all across the country. And so we'll be talking to some of our guests today about that as well. So that's our news roundup for today. We'll be back in just a few moments with our second segment of the show, and Emma Wells of the American Immigration Lawyers Association to talk about the immigration sweeps and other developments that are happening around the country. I'm your host, James Garcia. Thank you for joining us. You're listening to Vanguardia, Arizona.
Amigos, ¿cómo se encuentran? Aquí su amiga Lucy Guzmán platicando y dando sus consejitos en bienes y raíces. ¿Quiere comprar casa y ocupa esta guía? Escuche los martes por la tarde cómo prepararse. ¿Quiere un buen consejo? Escúchenos los martes por la tarde de 3:30 a 4 aquí en su estación La Onda 1190 AM.
Porque la información
pasa fronteras. Somos Yasmín Islas
y Enrique Delgadillo.
Y te invitamos de lunes a viernes de 2 a 3 de la tarde
a sintonizar
Noticias sobre la Mesa.
Noticias sobre la Mesa.
Tu radio sin
fronteras.
En esa hora donde Arizona y Sonora nos hermanamos
para resaltar nuestras raíces
y nuestras costumbres, porque llevamos a México en la sangre.
De 2 a 3 de la tarde te esperamos.
Por La Onda 1190 AM.
Nos salimos de WhatsApp y llegamos a la radio. Todos los miércoles a las 9 de la mañana te invitamos un cafecito con noticias, recursos, entrevistas, arte, negocios, espectáculos y un piquete de buen humor. Porque el periodismo es más que información, es diálogo y complicidad. Únete a nosotros para una dosis semanal de café y charlemos, porque en Conecta Arizona tú eres nuestra inspiración. Escucha la hora del cafecito de Conecta Arizona todos los miércoles a las 9 de la mañana en La Onda 1190.
Welcome back to Vanguardia, Arizona. I'm your host, James Garcia. We're being joined now by Emma Wells, the Arizona chapter president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, who was on with us just a couple of weeks ago as much of the kind of the controversial news with regards to President Trump's immigration sweeps was really starting to kick up quite a lot of dust. We spoke to her last because there were a number of arrests that were made here at immigration court, people who were going into court for sort of what they considered routine sort of visits to go through the process of trying to stay here in the country legally and had their cases dismissed, and then they were promptly detained and arrested, and it created a major storm at the immigration court. That's been happening around the country, and now, of course, we're seeing a bubble up on protests around the country against these immigration sweeps. And Emma's here to try to help us make a little bit of sense about all of this. Thank you for joining us, Emma Wells.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I know you're out of town visiting family, so I want to thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk to us today. Where are we right now? I mean, it's looking like there's a lot of different mixed messages coming out of the White House. I mean, on the one hand, immigration sweeps clearly have stepped up across the country. There are now troops in California since the last time you spoke, military troops in California, in an unprecedented move that hasn't been replicated since the 1960s in terms of sending troops somewhere without the permission of a governor to participate in some sort of enforcement activity. The word in California is presumably that the troops are there providing backup support to federal agents as they conduct their work. And yesterday there was a Marine, or rather a man who was detained by a Marine, briefly, a veteran, ironically. And so it just seems like we have a huge storm kept kicking up in so many different ways. And today, No More King's Day arrives, perhaps as appropriately as can possibly be. What do you make of the current situation?
It's a mess, and I think purposely so. So it is continue to just do the type of shock and awe that he has wanted to create confusion, scaring the community, bringing fear to the community. We are going to do fulfilling what he said was his promise to do this mass deportation, bring people out. At the same time, also reigning over it as reigning supreme, which is with this whole he's going to have a parade, but the community is also responding in force by showing up. I mean, I think that's been the beauty of this is that we've had so many people appear. Um, the Puente, Arizona had a recent event with training. They had 400 people show up
Wow.
to just do some training on how to be legal observers. And they have 2 other events coming up towards the end of June, and they have to cap how many people because it's just, this is a volunteer organization. 200 people for legal observations, another 200 on just training people on how to go to court.
And what
But
is it?
people are here.
I may ask, what does it mean when you
Yes.
say they're being trained to be legal observers? And who are these folks? Are they just volunteers from the community?
These are volunteers from the community, and that just means like how to interact with ICE, how to help someone who is perhaps going to court or it comes in contact with ICE if they are not U.S. citizens. So this is just how to do something so you are not subject to possibly being arrested or being told that you are breaking the law. So what it means to do a lawful interaction
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with federal agents. So
And
that is what it is.
And
Mm.
do Puente is one of many organizations doing this kind of work right now here on the ground.
Yes.
I mean, I think for our audience, kind of historically, a lot of these organizations have been around for quite some time now, but many of them kind of came onto the scene, burst onto the scene, if you will, and have been doing this kinds of work since the mid 2000s, early 2000s, in great part because Arizona has been such a kind of a pot boiler on so many of these issues, correct?
That is correct. And these orgs pop up because of issues that come up. Obviously, when we had Sheriff Arpaio, we had a lot of things that occurred at that time, and so different organizations were there to help and respond when we had all of these little missions that he did, like the driving while brown. So people responded and were helping out with the different legislation that was occurring during that period of time, which led to litigation that is still ongoing from that period of time. That is still there. So we're very fortunate that we have these organizations and these people that are here to help. And like what this here in in Arizona, and Arizona's just a hotbed. always has been, and we've been at the forefront of some of Trump's policies. We see a lot of immigration issues pop up here and then spread. They just seem to be like we're a tester.
Yeah. And I've heard, some criticism, which, as just me as an outside observer kind of looking in, doesn't seem particularly fair, but some criticism that somehow these organizations that are supporting immigrants' rights and doing the kind of work that Puente does, Lucha, Promise Arizona, so many others, that the expectation that maybe they should be in the streets every single day or every week, that kind of thing. But they really are doing extraordinary work behind the scenes, and it doesn't necessarily have to involve marching all the time, right?
No, of course not. And then for any of these organizations, everyone needs to remember these are volunteer.
Yeah.
This is all of this is volunteer work, and you can't be out there. This is not paid. This is not funded. These are not for profit organizations. Of course, we would love for people to be out there every single day, but how are you going to do that and pay your bills?
Seeing
So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm seeing I certainly witnessed in the 2000s and early, around 2010, so many of the people that were marching in the streets and knocking on doors and canvassing and helping overthrow, if you will, the regime of Senator Russell Pierce, who was the author of Senate Bill 1070, et cetera. So many of those people
Mhm.
were very young at the time, teenagers, sometimes kids. They've grown up now. Many of them are in public office and leading organizations. When you went to the Puente event, did you see another generation? Is there yet another generation of young people coming
Yes.
up?
Yes, it's amazing to see all the young people who are just horrified by what is going on, and he's like, "These are gonna be the leaders that we need to go forward and to take up the mantle and continue, to bring that passion and that fire and to tell Washington and tell our political, leaders that this is incorrect, that this is not the type of government that we want, this is not the type of community that we want." Well, we welcome all.
If
So it's
Yeah, and in terms of
yes.
the work that your organization does, tell us briefly about the American Immigration Lawyers Association and the kind of work that it's doing on the ground here in Arizona.
Well, what we are handling here is, obviously the immigration bar is under attack, and we continue to see more coming at us personally. So not just our clients, but particularly at immigration lawyers. Unfortunately, with what was going on in LA, we had attorneys that were trying to get to their clients that were detained during the raids, and they were denied access. We expect to see that more here. We had attorneys that were personally assaulted by ICE and were tear gassed as they were trying to get into the building to speak to clients. Um, this is really, really getting scary that we expect that kind of behavior to spread throughout the US. So it won't just be assault, it'll be physical assaults on us just trying to do our daily work. And then they're going to come after our licenses, and we're going to see more of you're being unethical. They're going to come up with reasons to strip us, to make it more difficult for us to just survive and to do what we're doing, to help our clients to continue to do this work.
Yeah, and it seems like the irony, or really more to the point, the hypocrisy of the situation is that these are law enforcement agencies and courts who are, in essence, violating the law. I mean, the idea of the president sending troops without the request of the governor in California to California to serve essentially as backup or participate somehow in uh, immigration detentions and that kind of thing, or the idea that a member of Congress shows up at a facility, at a holding facility, when they have a right to go in and inspect and are told no, you can't come in, or your organization and its lawyers not being able to see your clients. Those are all things that are completely contrary to the rule of law, aren't they?
It is very much so. So it's shocking to have gotten to this point where you're not supposed to block access to to block an attorney access to their client. You're not supposed to block the different branches of government. The senator in particular had a right to do oversight. what was going on in that hearing, and to physically grab him and drag him out in the hall, that was
You're talking about U.S.
horrifying, and to
Senator
bring him
Alex
down.
Padilla now. Yeah.
But yeah, they have the right to do oversight. You're now completely overstepping the branches of government, but they have been doing that by just ignoring the Supreme Court orders to bring back respondents who've been taken to El Salvador. Although they finally did, they did it in a very sneaky way. But instead of now are trying Quilmar Abrego Garcia, they brought him back, but they then are indicting him, trying to again try to prove a point. So it is just a massive push to try to do what we're doing today with that No King's March, is to show that they have a supreme power, which we are telling, and we as a people, that no, you do not. The executive branch is not the head of state. They are not a king. They are not the supreme power here in the US. We do have 3 branches of government.
Three
And that
branches,
is how we
yeah,
say.
3 branches of government and a mass electorate that has a lot to do with what those branches of government should be doing and saying on any given day. And that's what the march is today all about. No King's Day, which is happening as we speak. Emma Wells, the Arizona chapter president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, has been our guest. Emma, thank you so much. Be safe. I know you're doing incredible work. Be safe out there wherever you go, whether it's the courthouse or the streets. And thank you for providing us some insight today here on Vanguardia, Arizona. I'm your host, James Garcia. We'll be back in just a couple of moments with my guest, Julian Castro, excuse me, I'm sorry, Vanessa Fuentes.
¿Qué tal, amigos? Les saluda su amigo Ulises Ortiz para que se conecten con su programa ¿Qué onda, Arizona? De lunes a viernes de 4 a 6 de la tarde, donde tendremos noticias, deportes, entretenimiento y sobre todo mucha música. Tus tardes serán únicas en ¿Qué onda, Arizona? De 4 a 6 de la tarde. Conéctate con nosotros y sé parte de la historia aquí en tu casa a 1190.
¿Has intentado alcanzar el bienestar financiero, mental o físico y no lo has logrado? Soy Susana Díaz y te invito cada lunes a las 3 de la tarde a escuchar En Balance con Susana por la onda 1190M, y junto a expertos encontremos las herramientas, técnicas y métodos que nos lleven a vivir mejor. Recuerda, cada lunes a las 3 de la tarde tenemos una cita en la estación más informativa de Arizona, la 1190 AM.
¿Te has preguntado por qué sentimos lo que sentimos? Soy Carolina León y te invito a que conversemos juntos sobre la vida, las emociones y todo eso que a veces no sabemos cómo poner en palabras. Conversando con Psicología es un espacio para ti, para todos. Solo pláticas reales con un toque de psicología. Todos los martes de 1 a 2 de la tarde por la onda 99.5 FM y 1190 AM.
Welcome back to Vanguardia, Arizona. I'm your host, James Garcia. I have a special guest now, the former HUD Secretary, Julian Castro, a former San Antonio mayor, one-time presidential candidate, and now also the CEO of the Latino Community Foundation in California. Julian Castro is also a regular commentator, political commentator on MSNBC, and I'm sure you've seen him speaking up on so many of the issues that are impacting our communities today across the country. Julian, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's begin with the kind of elephant in the room, if you will, today, the No More Kings rallies that are going on around the country, and not just happening around the country on the anniversary of the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, and then also by coincidence, President Donald Trump's birthday, but really in a mass event in 2,000 cities across the country that's happening in the wake of really outrageous kind of controversial sweeps around the country by immigration authorities and federal authorities. What do you make of sort of the confluence of these events today?
Well, these are Americans that are speaking up and pushing back against what people of different backgrounds, as you said, 2,000 events. This is every corner of the country. What people see as a growing authoritarian impulse in this country, and specifically from the Trump administration, whether it's ignoring the rulings of courts or disappearing people, deporting people without due process, or what we saw the other day in Los Angeles, the manhandling and handcuffing of a United States senator who was simply asking a question of the Department of Homeland Security secretary. This is an administration that has run rampant over Congress, that has ignored judicial rulings. It's an administration that has caused a lot of alarm, even among people that don't necessarily agree on things like immigration policy, but that see this as way beyond the bounds of what our checks and balances government should allow.
Is I mean, it's hard to sort of pinpoint maybe what the most disturbing aspect of so much of what's happening today, but there does seem to be this thread right now coming out of the White House that the rules that apply to you and I and most people in this country with regards to not just immigration by any means, but the courts and how they should behave and due process and on and on. That these are rules that simply somehow don't apply to the White House. And that's frustrating, obviously, everyone who understands that a situation like that has a tendency to just create chaos. What can the American electorate do? What can public officials do to really substantively push back against that tendency?
Well, I think citizens can speak up, can do what we're going to see today in these No King rallies, can make sure that they're registered to vote and get out and vote. We always think about voting, and you think about that every 2 years with the midterm elections or 4 years with the presidential election. But there are local elections, there are special elections. So, in any way that you can make your voice heard at the ballot box, you should. On top of that, you can make your voice heard to your member of Congress, whether they're Democrat or Republican, and especially in that Phoenix area, for instance, you have a number. Arizona, you have a couple of districts that are swing districts. The state itself is a state that plays an outsized role in who becomes president in this country. So, for people there in Arizona, there's a particularly important role to play in upholding the values of this country and making sure that that's heard by elected officials and at the ballot box when these people were elected.
And not to be alarmist, but I heard recently that being alarmist maybe is a good idea right now. I mean, are we? We're barely 5 months into this administration. Are we going to make it to the midterms where we could actually flip the House or make some impact in the Senate that's going to start to really, in a substantive legislative way, push back? Are we going to make it there? I mean, are you concerned that things are falling apart too rapidly, or is the system going to hold in your view?
I mean, like a year ago, I would have taken that question and thought, hey, what are you talking about? But to me, that's not a ridiculous question at this point. And I think the answer to that question relies on what our courts do. If you have a Supreme Court that stands by precedent and the values of this country and the laws as they're written and as they've been interpreted by the Supreme Court before, and you have lower courts that do the same thing and hold the administration accountable when they overstep the bounds of the law, then my answer to that is yes. Even though it's going to be a very bumpy ride and a lot of people, especially vulnerable people, are going to get hurt between now and the midterms, yes, the country itself is going to be okay. If the courts don't do that, if they roll over the way that Congress, Republicans specifically in Congress, have rolled over and allowed the administration to take more and more of their authority, then that's where I think things get really, really scary.
Yeah, yeah. Let me bring in now to the conversation, and I know I don't know how long you're with us, Mr. Castro, but just let me know if you need to rush off in a moment. But let me bring now into the conversation Vanessa Fuentes, who is the mayor pro tem of Austin, Texas, where we're hearing in Texas now that the governor of Texas has brought out Texas National Guards to actually provide some sort of street patrols as well in the wake of what's happened in California with President Trump bringing the National Guard and Marines there. According to the Associated Press, there are some 5,000 Texas National Guard troops that have been called out and 2,000 state police, presumably to help local law enforcement. This is a quote from Mr. Abbott, manage protest against President Trump. Thank you for joining us, Mayor Pro Tem. I really appreciate you being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, I know you have a busy morning as well, but provide for me some insight there from Austin, Texas, the state capital. Uh, what does it mean to suddenly have National Guard participating in a rather unconventional way in managing something like street protest or perhaps providing support for immigration authorities?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, sending the National Guard is a clear signal that this is about military intimidation. It is not about keeping safety for individuals who are exercising their constitutional amendments. And it's really unfortunate to see the governor escalate already kind of fraught tensions that we have in our community, especially for our immigrant community. So it is really unfortunate to have that announcement without any coordination at the local level. Of course, now, since we learned about the National Guard being in our city, our police, our local law enforcement has been in coordination with our state troopers, and we know that the National Guard is coordinating with the state troopers. So certainly, we're going to have a lot of law enforcement on hand. I will tell you, here in Austin, we're hours before the protest. We're expecting about 10,000 residents, gathering at our state's capital in protest to the Trump administration and in protest to the unjust policies that were coming out of the federal government.
Yeah, I want to pose this question in a moment to Mr. Castro as well, but uh, Ms. Fuentes, rather Mayor Pro Tem, so many of the activities that have been generated by the White House across the board have had such dramatic impacts on communities of color. But with regards to maybe these most recent developments, of course, I think we're talking primarily about our Latino communities. What's been your message to your constituents, or Latinos in general in Texas about how they can protect themselves in these rather dark times?
Yeah, this issue is deeply personal to me. I am a daughter of a Mexican immigrant. I was raised in an immigrant household. The community I represent here in Austin is over 20% immigrants. So certainly, what we're seeing happening in Los Angeles and having these mass immigrant raids in work sites and in workplaces and places of worship, it has certainly made everyone super afraid of where to go, where is safe, and what to expect. And so, what we've been sharing with our community, first and foremost, is to know your rights and to be informed, to stay vigilant, to know what local resources we have available to our immigrant community, and then, of course, to stand firm. We are expressing solidarity as to what is happening in LA and what is happening across the country. And so I'm really heartened to know that many Austinites are going to be gathering here in a few hours and that we're going to, bring to light what this administration is doing.
Yeah, Secretary Castro, are you concerned, looking at this kind of big picture wise, that what President Trump is doing now in California, seemingly unrestrained, most recently by sending Marines over there, that this is something that he's going to be trying to do around the country? And are you hearing whether governors are collectively saying we need to find a way to stop this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think many of us are concerned that this is part of a playbook, as Mayor Pro Tem Fuentes said, not to help protect citizens exercise their First Amendment rights, but instead to intimidate people who would stand up against the administration's policies, would push back, intimidate them into basically shutting up. And my understanding, at least what's been in the news, is that there's a plan to do this with the military in other cities as well. Now, sometimes they get the help of governors like Governor Abbott in Texas, who has deployed the National Guard, I think, to Austin, to San Antonio, perhaps to other places. And you're probably going to see more red state governors call up the National Guard in that way if, as these protests continue. I think the big question is what happens in democratically run states like California, like Arizona, like others, where the governor may not be inclined to use the National Guard because these have largely been peaceful protests. In those instances, again, I think that this question is a legal one that's going to go to the courts. 2 days ago, a Ninth Circuit, a federal district court in California found that Trump's deployment of the National Guard against the wishes of Governor Newsom there violated the law. That ruling, that restraining order that was put on the federal government was then appealed to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit stopped that temporarily to hear arguments soon. So we really don't know yet where this is going to go in the courts, but ultimately I think it's going to be decided in the courts, assuming that the Trump administration follows the law after that. And I know, and there are probably people saying, well, how much, how good is that assumption? And I take that, but I think that's the way that it's going to play out.
Yeah. All right. My guests have been Secretary Julian Castro and Mayor Pro Tem of Austin, Texas, Vanessa Fuentes. I want to thank you so much for joining us today here at Vanguardia, Arizona, and providing some insight into kind of what's going on around the country. And thank you for all the great work that you're doing in your communities going forward. My name is James Garcia. I'm the host of Vanguardia, Arizona, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with our closing guest.
El proceso en el ámbito de bienes raíces ha cambiado drásticamente estos últimos años y hoy más que nunca es crucial estar bien representado a la hora de comprar o vender una casa. Soy Gonzalo Moreno, agente de bienes raíces con Home Real Estate, y junto con Lenny Canápoles, agente de préstamos, les invitamos a que nos escuche este y todos los sábados a las 10 de la mañana. Compartiremos con ustedes estrategias, planes disponibles y las mejores opciones para comprar su casa, porque el hacer las cosas bien desde el principio es nuestro lema. Le esperamos este y todos los sábados a las 10 de la mañana. Bienvenido a casa.
En La Onda tenemos un compromiso claro.
Llevarte la información que impacta tu vida.
Noticias locales, nacionales, el clima, el tráfico.
Y todo lo que necesitas saber para empezar tu día.
Noticias Enlace te conecta con lo que está pasando aquí y en el mundo.
Información clara, precisa y siempre al momento.
De lunes a viernes, de 7 a 9 de la mañana.
Con Ariane Ibáñez
y Enrique Delgadillo.
Por La Onda, la radio más informativa.
Welcome back to Vanguardia, Arizona. I'm your host, James Garcia. My guests now are the Executive Director of Promise Arizona, Petra Falcon, who's been doing just amazing work over the decades, really, here in our community in civil rights and immigrants' rights. And she does a lot of work with her organization here on these issues. Also, a civil rights activist and attorney, Emilia Bañuelos, calling in from Kingman. She's on the road. Thank you both for joining us. And in a moment, we may have Raquel Terán join us to talk a little bit about the No Kings protests that are happening today. Emilia and Petra, thank you so much for being with us.
Muy buenos días. Thank you so very much for this opportunity to have a conversation.
Are you there, Emilia, with us?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Okay, good
I'm
morning.
here. Thank you for the opportunity también.
Okay, fantastic. Let me. Somebody's on the air with music in the background. All right. Hello. So, Petra, let's begin, if we can, please. What's your sort of sense of what's happening here on the ground locally with the response to kind of all of the news and very ugly news about immigration sweeps that are going on around the country?
I think we need to take ourselves back 20 years when we were fighting Arpaio and Russell Pearson. and what happened with the community coming together and galvanizing and pushing back really, really hard. And obviously, we got them out of the way and we stopped SB 1070. Right now, what we're seeing, I think, our people are realizing what is going on. A president taking charge of wanting to take charge of this country and doing whatever he wants with it. And I think people are realizing this is going to continue to happen. It's going to continue to grow. And we've seen it in California with Senator Padilla and what happened there this week. And what I'm looking forward to is today, because I think all across the city, the state, people are joining to say no to President Trump about you can't do that. You can't go there. You can't go and arrest us an elected official. You can't go to a church. You can't go to a school and scare kids and their families. I just think we need to echo that voice over and over and over again, because we cannot tolerate that.
You know, I heard Teresa Romero, the president of United Farm Workers, speak the other day, and she said that farm workers, migrants, obviously those who are undocumented, and probably their families, are just literally terrified about what's happening right now. And I mean, are you hearing that as well in the community? Are people
Absolutely.
here locally just scared?
People are terrified. I walked in at the beginning of the week because we heard about the raids going on in the different grocery stores, and I walked into one of the stores and I went up to the cashier and I said, "Tomorrow, expect some raids." And her eyes just went, I mean, she just froze, and I could sense that she was really, really terrified. She was looking out at the floor at her store, looking at the people in the grocery store from the community. It's like, it's not ours anymore. Who does this belong to? Who does this space belong to? It's our space, and we need to claim it, and we need to say, you can't come in here.
Yeah, yeah. Emilia, in your role as an attorney, are you hearing the same thing in the community from either your clients or friends of or associates of? Are they really truly sort of terrified about the situation they're in now?
You know what is amazing? How people are so terrified. It's sad. It makes me. I mean, just talking to people, their eyes water up because they're like, "How can this be happening to us?" And there is no hiding. Just the amount of fear, the amount of basically the trauma that everybody has on a daily basis. I mean, just you don't know if it's the last time you're gonna hug your husband or your father or your children, and that is something that people are living every single day in fear. I mean, just the sound of that immigration might come in, it just completely throws the day off for entire communities. And I just don't understand how people could live in such fear and trauma every single day. And the fact that they're imprisoned in their own home sometimes for fear of going outside of their home because they fear immigration. Just nobody understands the reality of what is going on with people who are undocumented and their families. This is not just about people, entire communities.
I don't know if Emilia, I'm sorry, can you hear that? We seem to have some music in the back where you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't know
sure.
where that music
I
was
don't know
coming
where
from,
that was
so I'm
coming from. I apologize. I apologize for that. But do we have Raquel Teran now on the air? Are you there, Raquel? Okay, I guess there's.
From me.
Oh, the music's come from you. It's in your background. If you could be to your
So
mic.
sorry.
That's
I just
how about you give us a kind of just a 2-minute snapshot on what's going to be happening with the No Kings Day rallies, and while we have you, and we'll and just speak loudly, and we'll get you over the sound of that music in the background.
yes, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was not muted. But yeah, I'm here at the Capitol. There's about 40 other events happening all across the state, organized by Indivisible and Movement 5051 and 25 other organizations. But this is a national protest, reminding us that Donald Trump is not the king of America. And we're here to remind everybody that we are a democracy and we're built on checks and balances and not at the whims of one man. So we are here. We're demonstrating our first in the First Amendment, we all have the power to protest. So show up if you have that freedom, if you feel that liberty, because we know not everybody has that freedom at this moment. But if you do, we need you out in the street with this collective effort that are rejecting the extremism of Donald Trump. So today we're at the Capitol. It starts at 9. We're expecting about 6 speakers and a lot of dances. There's a carnival because we also have to remind people that nobody's going to take a joy away.
And for our listeners, Raquel is a former state legislator, longtime community activist on so many levels. And Raquel, just to close out, do you feel confident that these 2,000 cities that are participating around the country in No King's Day and the message that they are trying to send, which goes well beyond immigration, not just immigration by any means, they're talking about all sorts of other things. Do you feel that this is a message that's going to be heard and resonate in Washington, in the White House, in Congress?
We have to believe that we are power to protest, will dissent, and will change things around. We've done it before. When we sit home and not say anything about what is happening, that's when things go south. But right now, we need to be protesting, and I know that that's how we changed Arizona. That's how we pushed out extremists like Joe Arpaio and Russell Pierce. And I know that that's how we fought SB 1070. Only by protesting and showing up, organizing, building power, using the courts, every single tactic at our disposal to to fight back. We have to use it. I do believe that.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Raquel Teran, for joining us from the state capitol, where the local march is happening and rally. And this again is happening in 40 cities around the state and 2,000 cities across the country. Raquel, I appreciate your time with us. We're going to go back to our other guest now. Petra, let me come back to you for just a quick moment. What you were talking about earlier in terms of the activism that existed around 2010 and before and since. That you feel like what's happening today is kind of part of that, an extension of that.
Well, we've lived it before, and what we can say is when we worked together, when we brought coalitions together, we were able to defeat SB 1070 and oust Russell Pierce from his Senate seat. So again, we're seeing it today. We had not seen it as clear as we are going to see it today, I don't think, but people were just trying to get a sense of, is this for real or is it just something that's going to pass by? But it's for real. It's really for real. The raids that are starting to happen here in Arizona are for real. Families are very, very frightened about that. But the red card that you have here on your desk is about people need to know their rights. But then we need to keep adding to that, and we need to keep reminding people they don't have to. They don't have to open their door. They don't have to. When an employer has an ICE person out on the door, unless they have the right warrant with them, they should not be allowed in. And a person does not have to speak to an officer unless he sees that warrant themselves. So these are the rights that they need to understand, that they don't have to say anything. They don't have to sign anything unless they see an attorney. So attorneys right now, they're probably exhausted because they are getting a lot of phone calls.
Yeah, yeah, Emilia. First of all, I apologize for that the technical, the background sound when you were talking earlier. So I'm so sorry for that. But could you speak to right now? Is that message getting out? Is the Know Your Rights message getting out effectively to our community, given everything they're facing?
I believe that people are listening. I believe that I'm encouraged because I see that it's growing. I still believe that we need a lot more work because we need to have 100% of our people knowing this is a planned attack on our community. And it's very unorganized. And they're basically what they're doing is testing how far ICE and the Department of Home Security can go before being slapped down by either a court or being snapped by the lawsuits that are going to be filed. And basically, it's racial profiling at its best. And I believe that our job until this stops, and we need to continue informing people, because if nobody says a single thing, they don't know. and they're going to be arresting U.S. citizens, illegal residents, and those lawsuits are going to be filed. I believe that that's what's going to stop them. The only way that ICE is going to be stopped is by us we have to keep fighting and inform every single person in Arizona and Maricopa in the city and not allow ICE to enter our homes, our businesses, and we got to stop them. And it's not just not saying anything; it's showing up when they're there and protesting and recording and using those videos as evidence as to what illegal activities. When is the law enforcement, the people that are supposed to enforce the laws, are actually violating the Constitution and the laws? And that's what we really need to. We have a lot of work to do. I believe that the message is getting out, and I'm so proud of all the volunteers. There's so many young people, older people. I mean, this is 40 years of bad immigration laws that have basically given this president authority, and he is stretching it with executive orders. So we have a lot to fight, but I believe that and we have a lot of work to do. But I would say that so far the message is just, especially with social media and these programs like this one, people are getting the message, and we just really need to keep reaching out.
Yeah, yeah. We'll close. I mean, I think you're closing on a very hopeful note, despite sort of all of the bad news that's coming around the country today. But because there is, it's really unprecedented. 2,000 cities are going to be participating in these rallies and marches today. Of course, we hope that overwhelmingly, all of them just remain as peaceful as possible, so that the message doesn't get lost. Right, the message that you're delivering, that the American electorate does want to live by the rule of law, and that there is a process, and that that's where peace lies, not in the idea of having a government that essentially decides when and where it's going to apply the law or abide by the law. And it sounds like so far, at least, the courts are holding. The courts are holding, even if our representatives in Congress don't seem to be able to stop what the president's doing. But I want to thank you, Emilia Bañuelos, civil rights activist, attorney, and then also Petra Falcon, the executive director of Promise Arizona, for being with us here in this last segment of the show, and thank our listeners for listening to Vanguardia Arizona. I'm your host, James Garcia. We'll see you next week.
You are listening to KRPH Morristown, Arizona, and KNUV Towson, Arizona.
Escúchenos en www.laonda99.5 FM.
Sabemos que te interesa la buena radio, con temas de interés que solo aquí encuentras.
Porque somos más que una estación de radio.
Tecnología, ciencia, bienes raíces, salud, conocimiento, cultura, gastronomía, deportes, entretenimiento, comunidad y mucho más.
Porque nos preocupamos de que recibas las noticias locales, nacionales e internacionales 24/7.
Porque tu futuro está en lo que escuchas.
Porque somos esa onda que sí conecta. Búscanos en redes sociales, plataformas digitales y ahora también nos escuchas en FM.
Somos la onda 99.5 FM.
Porque estamos evolucionando contigo. Ahora cambiamos a la 99.5 FM. La onda 99.5 FM.
Hola, ¿qué tal, amigos? ¿Cómo están? Lo quiero invitar